Welcome to The Explainer. Every 4 years, we gear up for the World Cup expecting spectacular goals, unbridled passion, the usual, right? But man, nobody, and I mean literally nobody, was prepared for the sheer history that was made on day one of 2026. Today, we're breaking down the completely unprecedented, mind-boggling chaos of that Mexico versus South Africa opener. Okay, let's dive right into this. 3. That is the magic, or actually maybe I should say the tragic number of the hour. 3 players sent off in the very first game of the tournament. 3 red cards. It's just a staggering punch-in-the-gut anomaly. I mean, it left the fans in the stands, the pundits up in the booth, even the FIFA officials looking completely stunned. They absolutely were not ready for this level of chaos on day one. Just think about the stark reality of that for a second. We aren't talking about some bitter, decades-old international rivalry boiling over here. This wasn't a desperate, high-stakes knockout game or a tense tournament final. This was Game 1. Game 1 out of 104 total matches. Usually, the opening match is this festive celebration, setting a joyful tone for the rest of the month. Instead, it turned into an absolute disciplinary battlefield right out of the gate.
Now, looking at the pure stats, Mexico secured a really solid 2-0 victory, and let me tell you, the Estadio Azteca was absolutely rocking thanks to those fantastic goals from Julián Quiñones and Raúl Jiménez. But the real story is the indiscipline. South Africa didn't just drop the match, they racked up 2 red cards. Mexico picked up on themselves. So those brilliant goals kind of just got completely overshadowed by the sheer chaos unfolding on the pitch.
To really grasp the gravity of this, we kind of need to look at how the tournament rules actually work. Look, we all know a red card means you're tossed from the game, obviously. But the real catastrophe in World Cup play is that automatic secondary punishment. Getting a red triggers an immediate, mandatory suspension for your team's very next match. And that brings us to the most devastating reality of this whole situation. You aren't just hurting your team today by leaving them exhausted and playing a man down, you are hurting them tomorrow. At the biggest, most intensely competitive tournament on Earth, missing that next game is the true severe punishment. The sting of leaving your teammates to fend for themselves, that lasts way, way beyond the final whistle of the current game. It literally alters the entire trajectory of the squad. So naturally, looking at this absolute day one madness, everyone from your casual viewers to the hardcore, die-hard statisticians is asking the exact same question. Has anything like this ever happened before? Well, we already know 3 red cards in an opening match has never happened. Not once in World Cup history. You genuinely cannot script that. But what about any World Cup game? What are the odds of a match just imploding like this at any point during the tournament?
Well, here is where we hit a jaw-dropping historical irony. This exact scenario has actually happened once before. Yep, back in 1998, a single match saw 3 red cards fly out of the ref's pocket. The teams playing? Denmark and South Africa. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. In the entire, vast, decades-long history of the World Cup, exactly 2 matches have ever produced 3 red cards, and South Africa is the common denominator in both of them.
You could call it a bizarre historical coincidence, sure, but honestly, that's not bad luck. That's a pattern someone at the South African Football Association desperately needs to address. Think about it. When you are the common denominator in the 2 most card-happy games in football history, separated by almost 30 years, you might really want to have a serious sit-down with your discipline coach. It's just a piece of history you absolutely do not want to be associated with. But let's move from that historical baggage to the incredibly ruthless reality of the present. The World Cup group stage is unforgiving. We're talking about a highly compressed 3-game sprint where your margin for error is basically 0. The math is simple, and it is totally ruthless. Every single point matters, and every single player matters. When you lose key personnel on day 1, that ripple effect, it completely alters the calculus of the entire group stage for everyone involved.
Let's actually look at the immediate squad headaches both these teams are facing right now. South Africa is in a brutal spot. They're sitting on 0 points from the loss, and now they're missing 2 players for their absolutely crucial next match. They're going into Game 2 short-handed against an opponent who, frankly, won't care one bit about their bad luck. But hey, Mexico isn't completely smiling either. Yeah, they bagged those precious 3 points, but they lost Cesar Montes late in the game to a red. He's a massively key center back for them. So, walking away with a win is great, but losing a critical defender, that makes the victory incredibly costly. Both teams are walking away with massive headaches they really didn't need.
So, what's the next strategic move here?
If you're a manager, a player, or just a stressed-out fan of either team, you're probably asking, can you appeal a red card at the World Cup? Like, will FIFA's disciplinary committee swoop in, recognize how totally chaotic the opening match was, and overturn these disastrous suspensions before the next kickoff? The short answer is yes. Teams absolutely have the right to submit an appeal to FIFA.
But the crucial point here is you probably shouldn't hold your breath. The honest reality of the appeals process is pretty grim. Appeals rarely work unless the referee made a glaringly obvious, undeniable mistake. If the red card was for violent conduct, yeah, those are almost never overturned. If it was for denying a goal-scoring opportunity, which actually was the case for one of the red cards tonight, it occasionally gets reduced, but it's highly, highly unlikely. These players are almost certainly going to be watching their next game from the stands. And because of this unprecedented disciplinary chaos, Game 2 instantly becomes a must-win scenario, but you're forced to do it with a much weaker squad. The 2026 World Cup has barely even kicked off, and the stakes have already absolutely skyrocketed for these two nations. Football is a ruthless sport on a normal day, right? But tournament football amplifies that ruthlessness to a terrifying degree. Surviving the group stage just became a much steeper mountain to climb, demanding immediate tactical shifts and relying heavily on deep bench strength.
Which brings us to the ultimate question leaving this incredible opening match. Which team recovers faster? Tonight gave us goals, a packed rockin' stadium, and a moment that is going to be replayed for years to come. Group tables are already shifting, key pieces are missing, and the pressure is completely on. Because at a World Cup, how you respond to chaos is just as important as avoiding it in the first place. So who will adapt and who will crumble? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and enjoy the rest of the unbelievable drama this tournament is guaranteed to bring.